And welcome to another episode of Patriots 4th and 2. I am your host today, Derek Havens, and as joining me as always is Mr. Steve Balsherry. We are both PatsFans.com bloggers. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about kind of the latest draft rumors and what we want the Patriots to do next week. We also have an ESPN article to discuss and just a little kind of Pats draft potpourri. Steve and I figure we just kind of catch up on just all the things that we've discussed the last couple weeks with the draft, 9 days away now.
Yeah,
It's crazy. It's almost here. Before we get into anything, though, of course, I got to ask Steve, how we doing today, man?
I'm doing good, and it's 8 days now.
8 days.
Yeah,
8 days, yes.
eight
Yeah.
days.
Math is hard.
We're down to single-digit midgets now.
Yeah.
I really wish they would have the draft earlier because, as you and I talked about offline, we're in disinformation season now,
It's gotten
and
silly.
now it's like pretty much all of the evaluation stuff that people have been going over for months now, it's kind of worn out. And now people are just not talking bad about anybody, but they're just kind of throwing stuff at a wall now and seeing what sticks, right?
Yeah, it is disinformation season. It is silly season, however you want to classify that. I think this year we've talked about this on previous shows, Steve. I think this year feels even more so draining, at least from the Patriots fan perspective, just because a lot of people started looking at the draft stuff way earlier than normal. I mean, I usually wait until about January. I watch college football, watch the college football season, and there are guys that catch my eye and stuff, but I don't really start diving deep into guys until, deep into draft prospects until, I don't know, like January. This year I started in like early October, just given the state of the team. It is what it is. I did find it interesting though. Did you about Michael Penix? We had that conversation. What was that? 2 shows ago, how we thought it was kind of bizarre that they've shown little to no interest. And then all of a sudden, when we're in, down the stretch here, he makes a visit. Well, give me your take on that. Do you read anything into that?
Well, I think, they're leaving open the possibility that they could trade back if people are approaching them with more and more draft capital. And, maybe they're in a little disinformation, right? Mode where they're throwing people off the scent a little that they're going to stay, or they're just trying to generate some more interest. Hey, they're looking at this guy, maybe they are willing to trade back. Let's up our offer a little bit and see if we can get him to bite.
Right. I didn't know with Penix, like we talked about a couple weeks ago, I didn't know if they had just taken him off their board from a medical standpoint, if that they just didn't see him as a fit. I still thought it was weird, just considering he's one of the better quarterback prospects to not at least sit down. I just feel like it's so important. Sometimes people look into visits and they're looking at they're looking at a team being like, there's no chance you're going to be able to draft that guy. He's going to be gone long before. But sometimes if there's a prospect that you really like, it's due diligence to sit down with them, because if they ever become available, you get to see what kind of person they are. You get to actually have a conversation with them, check, work them out in person, etc. I just think there's value to those things.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you don't want to waste your time, but I do think there's value in it.
And one of the things Bill used to do quite often is, he would meet with guys that maybe they weren't going to draft, but see what makes them tick and, look for things that you could exploit if you meet them on the opposite side of the football field.
Right, exactly. And so there's a lot of there's a cat and mouse game going all over, between teams, between prospects and coaches and, different evaluators. Everyone's trying to, not reveal their hand. It's poker season right now. So that's what it is. I know we've been talking about a couple different things, and I want to thank everyone for listening live. If anyone listening live wants to drop a question in the comment box, do it. There's just something else that I kind of was curious, Steve. Um, I've heard this argument a lot, obviously throughout the last couple of months, and even recently. And I was listening to a show and heard him talk about this yesterday, and I figured we should just bat it around a little bit. Let's play the pros and cons game of selecting a quarterback at number 3 with the current state of the Patriots roster, because a lot of times what you hear is, well, the Patriots roster is not in position, to put a good rookie quarterback in a good position to succeed, or whatever, however you want to classify it, phrase it as. And I would also say, well, you could make that case, but maybe he doesn't have to play right away. Like if they draft Drake May, I mean, we've talked about it offline and online. I mean, he could start, but I don't think it'd be crazy if he sat for half the season behind Jacoby Brissett. And if you really are worried about what the state of the roster is, but you're not sure you're going to get into the top 3 again, or what the quarterback prospects are be, and you really believe that he's the guy, I think you got to take him, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've seen other teams struggle with this. Look at Miami. For years, they were trying to find the replacement for Dan Marino. And, even if you do take a shot and you miss, at least you were trying to find that guy, right? And if you don't take that shot, then obviously you're not going to have that position. You're not going to be in that position again, So you don't want a top 3 pick next year, right?
No. Our conversation the other day. Well, I think it was either Monday or Tuesday. We talked both days, but if Jacoby Brissett, we both think that Jacoby is a really good backup quarterback. He's fine. He's fine for what he's going to bring to the table. And I think that was a good plan by going out to get him, to bring him in and kind of steady the boat. We talked about it the other day. If you had taken Jacoby Brissett, you dropped him onto last year's quarterback room and made him the starter, the Patriots probably win 3 more games, in my opinion. I think I don't want to go through like which ones, but how many times did the team lose by like 1 score, or couldn't put any points on the board? Just had a totally dysfunctional quarterback. And with him being a steadying presence and how well that defense was playing, I think you could go ahead and win 3 more games. But I also want to flip it around and say that for this coming year, I don't want to just take Bill Belichick out of the equation and just pretend like that's not going to be a downgrade to Gerard Mayo. I'm hoping, and I think Gerard will be a very good coach, but we're talking about replacing Bill Belichick. So I do think there's a factor there too. Although based on every single article that comes out lately, it seems like it doesn't matter what Bill did. So we'll get to that later. But so let's play it out. Let's talk about the cons of taking a quarterback, Steve, at number 3. I would say the cons would be, if you wanted to play the other side of the street and say, yeah, the team isn't ready. Well, you could absolutely go ahead and take a blue chip prospect in a Marvin Harrison Jr. or a Joe Alt. Both, I feel like, are pretty safe picks for what they project to be. And you could get where I think a lot of these quarterbacks are projections. They're good prospects. They're highly ranked prospects. But I think in terms of like knowing what you're going to get, like Joe Alt should be your left tackle for the next decade. And Marvin Harrison Jr. could be one of the better receivers in the league for the next 8 to 10 years or whatever it is. I think you can make the case that it's a safer route, and the team just needs to add talent and hit on the pick. I mean, it's hard because it's like you want to take a swing at the apple at the most important position. At the same time, you want to make sure you come away from this draft with some blue chip talent because your team just is depleted of that.
Right. And, my feeling on this, it mirrors what you just said exactly. I mean, we know those 2 guys, barring injury, they're going to be fantastic players. I mean, I don't think anyone has any doubt about that. The only thing that could halt either one of those guys, I believe, is injuries or off-field stuff, which neither one of those guys seems to have that issue moving forward. Mm-hmm. So my only concern would be, not concern. If they wanted to do that, because they don't believe in any of these quarterbacks,
Right,
then
exactly.
that's fine. Then I'm fully on board with that. But we all know quarterback is the most important position in the NFL,
And
and
and you
you
know what?
gotta
If
have
they
that guy.
Yeah, and you know what? And I know the Vikings are, hang on, before we do this, Russ chimes in. I have to share when Russ chimes in. Jonathan Crawford after PG is great.
I love
I
Russ.
agree. I agree with you, Russ. I do agree. He is there. Um, well, I would say this too, Steve. The whole Minnesota offer to me is really kind of annoying, and the projected offer of 11 this year, 23 this year, and a first next year for number 3. To me personally, I don't think it's enough. I don't think it's kind of close to enough, to be honest. And if they think any of these top quarterbacks, if they truly believe they're franchise level quarterbacks and they're available, you have to go ahead and take it. You can't. It doesn't matter if it's 3 first-round picks or 5 first-round picks or four, whatever it is. Like, it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, if that quarterback is good and he lifts your franchise up, well, then no one will remember what you turned down. Or vice versa. If we talk about the JJ McCarthy like discourse, like with everything going on in that whole storyline. And if the Vikings trade up 3 first-round picks, well, if he's a good player, then no one will remember they traded up that many first-round picks.
Exactly.
They will. They will if he's not good. But that's a different. That's a different conversation.
That's the big thing.
And
if it works, then nobody will care or remember. If it doesn't, you're going to hear about it. And I've heard some people say, well, they could trade back with the Giants and still maybe get McCarthy at 6. But then, you're leaving yourself open for a bitter disappointment there, because then what happens if some other quarterback needy teams jump up into 4 or 5?
Exactly.
So if you're going to play that game to where, we can trade back just a few spots and still get our guy, you're forgetting about picks 4 and 5, and other teams might jump in ahead of you. And so, I know we're beating a dead horse here, because you and I have been talking about it for a while. If the guy you want is there, take him, because you have to have that quarterback.
Right.
And I love Joe Alt. I think he, like you said, he's going to be one of the top left tackles in the game for at least 8 to 10 years. And same with Harrison. So, I don't have any issue with those players whatsoever, but I just think you have to have a quarterback. And we've seen the difference having that quarterback can make. I mean, how many times did the Patriots win a Super Bowl? Not comparing any of these guys to Brady, just saying as an example, where people were saying, well, Team A is much more talented than the Patriots in a Super Bowl. Team A is, spot for spot down the roster, they're better, and the Patriots win.
Well, that's why the quarterback is the most important, position in sports. I mean, it makes a massive difference. I mean, look at even like what the Chiefs did this year. I think a lot of people looked at the Chiefs as kind of a reset year. I certainly did early, and then all of a sudden, Patrick Mahomes shows up and does what he does, and there's nothing that matters more than that position. So that's why I'm just not just giving away 3. And I really don't even want the team to move down to 11. Like, they could move down if they really don't want to take a quarterback and they feel like they want to just get a little extra capital or whatever, move down 3-4 picks. Still come away with they need to come away with a very good player if it's not going to be a quarterback. And Russell, I didn't say just a receiver. I said tackle or receiver. Okay, so let's not make it a fight through the comments. To answer Todd's question,
I need to talk to Russ offline when I get a chance. So, but I haven't talked to him.
To answer Todd's question, next year's quarterback class, I mean, We'll see. I mean, look at this quarterback class really quickly. Caleb Williams and Drake May were because Drake May a year ago was coming off a really good season and then kind of struggled this year, which entered the conversation. Jaden Daniels was not a first round pick. He wasn't even probably a third round pick. He maybe third or fourth, but then he had a crazy season, won the Heisman, and all of a sudden he's in the top 3 conversation. But you have Shedeur Sanders from Colorado, Quinn Ewers from Texas, Carson Beck from Georgia, Riley Leonard, who transferred to Notre Dame, and then Drew Aller from, I'm trying to remember, I think it's Drew Aller from Penn State. Those are probably the top guys in my mind. I'm probably forgetting a couple, but you just really, you don't know a year from now 100% what it's going to look like, and you don't know if you're going to be in position to give up. I mean, you could be the Denver Broncos, maybe not the Denver Broncos, because that's probably a bad example, just given their draft capital. But you could be the Minnesota Vikings or the Las Vegas Raiders and be in desperate need of a quarterback, willing to trade multiple first-round picks to get the quarterback, but are just too far back, and the teams are unwilling to move down. So that's why my whole thing is, Steve, that if you're in position to take the quarterback and you need one, just take him now, and then you'll figure it out. If you're so worried about the offensive line that you don't want to get him hurt or quote unquote ruin him, as a quarterback prospect, then just don't play him until you get that situation figured out. But you'd rather have that guy on the roster, than not, in my opinion. Steve, anything to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you still have questions about your offensive line, you still have a bunch of more picks in the draft to get that. And there's some quality guys out there. It doesn't have to be in top of the first round. There's quality guys that you can develop right there.
And I would say too that right now, let's look at the offensive line. I mean, I'm not crazy about Cole Strange, but I think he's a starting call. I think he's been at least an okay starter, at left guard. But David Andrews, Mike Onwenu, I think they have some other guys at guard that they can plug in, whether it's Mafi or whoever it's going to be.
Yeah.
And then you got Chucks from the Steelers, who some people think he could be left tackle, but at the very worst, he's on the right side. So really, your offensive line, aside from your left tackle, I don't think should be terrible. I mean, it won't be like the Cowboys from a couple of years ago, or but it will be. I think it will be a representative line, And Steve and I were actually just going off this, Todd, for next year. There's some really good tackle. There's like 4 or 5 really highly graded, tackle prospects coming out next year, and so for me. My whole plan was if the Patriots take a quarterback at 3, there's a lot of really good receiver prospects. Load up that room, sign a veteran at left tackle, and then next year, because I'm sure you'll be at worst, you'll be middle of the pack drafting next year. Then you can go and get that franchise left tackle next year, and hopefully you can, add another veteran or 2, and maybe you're more competitive in year 2 of this whole thing. But I just think you got to start with the signal caller. It's just I can't get away from it, and it's tough. So let me ask you this, Steve, and I wish I had a banner prepared for it, but I don't. What are some of your favorite prospects? Any position? And I don't mean to. I can start if you aren't ready, because I kind of throw a curveball at you. But as we've done the last few weeks,
that's good. I mean, you keep me on my toes, man. So
yeah. Well, the last 4 shows, we went through and did some rankings and talked about some of our favorite players. Like for me, Joe Alt from Notre Dame, the tackles, absolutely one of my favorites. I was just having an argument on Twitter. Of course, what else was Twitter good for these days? About Brock Bowers. Some people are.
Oh yeah,
this guy said Brock Bowers is so underrated by people. I said it's not about he's underrated. I think people think he's one of the better prospects in the draft. It's just hard to take a tight end in the top 10. So he'll still go in the teens, but people are going to value quarterback, receiver, and tackle higher than tight end.
Yeah, I mean, look, Rob Gronkowski was drafted in the 2nd round.
Yeah, and that's partly because of his back. He probably
Yeah,
otherwise he would have been a first rounder, but he still probably would have been in the same Brock Bowers conversation, like somewhere in the top 20.
yeah.
I don't.
You know, you know. I think Brock Bowers is going to be a great tight end in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about favorite prospects. He's definitely up there because I think he's going to be fun to watch. Unfortunately, it looks like he'll end up with the Jets. So,
I was just going to say the Jets are definitely going tackle, or they're going to go Brock Bowers. They probably should go tackle, but man, if they get Brock Bowers, that would be sick. And very disappointing because I hate when players that I like go to teams that I loathe. So, it's
yeah,
like,
but I think he's going to be an exciting guy to watch in the NFL.
yeah,
I really like him. Kind of a not really a top tier guy, but a guy that I'm excited to see how he plays out. Malachi Corey.
yeah,
And, I saw recently where a couple of guys had him going to the Patriots, later on. And
yeah,
I
about
wouldn't,
68.
yeah.
I,
Yeah,
or,
I,
yeah,
I, I wouldn't be against that at all. I think he's one of those guys that, he doesn't come from, one of the football factories, that we see in college football, but I just think he's going to be really fun to watch.
Well, he runs angry. He plays hard. And that's funny. I was listening to somebody talk about him the other day. He entered school as I think he was a 2-star cornerback, and then he moved to running back, which I knew. I just didn't know. I didn't know the cornerback part. And then he moved to running back, then started playing receiver. And I was talking to somebody. The other day and saying, with the new kickoff rules, it'll be interesting if teams use traditionally when teams use kickoff returners, they use receivers. But I think with the new rules, I wonder if running backs would be used more. And like speaking of Malachi Corley, he'd be perfect for the new kickoff rules as a returner. If that's where it goes, because you need a lot of short area quickness and toughness and everything. And I don't know. I think that'll be interesting. I don't know if that'll turn out to be right or not, but I think that would be like really interesting. But I think at the very least, you can get him you just get him the ball in space until he kind of develops more into that receiver you bring on. But I know you and I definitely both like him. I mean, man, there's a lot of people that I really like in this draft. There's a lot of really good players. I know the Patriots, we don't really need a safety, but I like Tyler Newman a lot. Johnny Newton, the interior defensive tackle, I think is a fun player. There's Mo Kamara, the Colorado State edge player, I think is fun. Mel Kiper turned me on to him probably about 8 weeks ago, and ever since Mel said that, I've seen him in a lot more people's mocks. So, but he's fascinating. I love Roman Wilson and Ladd McConkey and Ricky Pearsall. Middle round. If like the Patriots go at 34 with I don't know if Roman Wilson might be a little high for him, but those three players somewhere in that second, early third range, I think they would be fun fits. I just don't know. I'm just so fascinated, Steve, to see what this team really is looking for. What is this team looking for in a prospect? Because as we've said before, we used to know like what Bill would want per se. What kind of traits Bill would look for and the guys that he would have and things like that. Now we don't know what Elliott Wolf and Gerard Mayo are going to do.
Yeah, I mean, nobody knows. And that's this year's draft. I think, we're pretty safe to say Caleb Williams is number one. After that, I mean, the first round in this draft is going to ruin everyone's mock drafts, I think, because I think there's so many variables and so many teams want to move up and down that it's going to be absolute chaos and fun to watch. I can't wait. So
I think
you don't know what the Patriots. We don't. I mean, nobody does. I mean, we know they need a quarterback and they want one. we know they want and need, tackle, wide receiver, but how are they going to go about getting those guys? Anybody's guess.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how that all plays out. Let's pick that up on the other side because we can pick at that for a few minutes. Let's just take a quick break for podcast purposes, and we will be back right after this. All right, and we are back here on Patriots 4th and 2 again. Derek Haven, Steve Balsherry. Thanks for everyone who tuned in live. We're just kind of having a normal draft conversation. I do want to say one thing real quick. Just please subscribe to us on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. Like, share, leave us a review. Keeps us high in the podcast rankings, so other Patriots fans can find us. I do want to say, though, too, and I'll mention this again at the end of the show here, we have our annual first-round mock draft on Monday. We usually do the show on Wednesday, but with the draft starting Thursday, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. So probably the same time, if that works for Steve, I'm sure we'll just do the same time, and we'll go through and Steve and I will start going back and forth probably over the weekend, going through all the picks. It'll be for all 32 teams. Who do we have picking for the Patriots last year, Steve? Do you remember?
I think it was me last year.
Okay, well maybe I'll throw everything. I'll give Russ a coronary and draft Marvin Harrison Jr. Something like that. No, I wouldn't do that. But I'm looking forward to doing that, and we'll go ahead and we'll do it offline, and then we'll kind of show, we'll go down the list. I'm looking forward to that because that's always a fun exercise, and we've had a few good hits in recent years. Not all turned out to be good players, but we had some hits, so that's all that matters.
Both of us a few years ago wanted Deebo Samuel, but we both said they're going to pick N'Keal Harry, and unfortunately, we were right.
We both liked Deebo. I still to this day don't get it. I wanted AJ Brown or him, and for our draft, and it's in the archives, so we picked N'Keal. Unfortunately, just felt like that made more sense for them. But anyway, so speaking of ESPN,
my phone, I didn't mute it, and I just got an alert for something. So
it's probably Kraft taking another shot at Bill. We'll finish up talking about that article here in a little bit. I'm not spending a lot of time on that. So, like you said, to start the first round, Steve, I do think it's going to be fascinating. Like, if it's anything other than if Caleb Williams is not the number 1 overall pick, it's going to start just by absolutely, like, Twitter will explode 100%.
Oh my
God. 2, depending on who you talk to, it seems like it's Jaden Daniels, but then you talk to some other people and it's Drake May. I think it's going to be Jaden, but I don't know. I'll be interested to see. If it's not some combination of Jaden Daniels or Drake May at number 2, I also think the draft starts getting, if they just go JJ McCarthy or something like that, that would be crazy. For the Patriots, I think it's going to be fascinating because they're on the clock so much sooner than they traditionally have been. The last several years, it's like you usually got to wait around. Now you're going to be finding out what's going on right off the top. It's going to be pretty crazy. Do you like that? I mean, obviously, you like that they have a high selection, not necessarily they had a bad season, but you think you're gonna like that? Finding out right away what they're going to do.
Oh yeah, I'm excited for it. Yesterday afternoon I was on 93.9 in Pittsburgh with some friends out there. Ralph Williams, who does a sports show for the Pittsburgh area, he had me on there, and we were talking about how we wanted, or how he asked me how I saw that developing, and I said I think they're really going to take a quarterback at number 3, and he agreed. He thought that was the best move for the Patriots as well.
Yeah, I mean, they've been searching for it since Brady left. I mean, they just haven't. You had that first season with Mac, but other than that, you've been just kind of they've been trying to put the quarterback position together with like duct tape and glue, and it just can't. You just can't really operate and have success, like that. If you let me ask you this: if you couldn't take a quarterback, you just weren't allowed to, and you can't trade, who are you taking?
At number 3,
Yeah,
then I think it would be Joel.
I think I would do the same. The receivers would be tempting because they're both. I really like Malik Neighbors.
Yeah.
I think the gap with him and Marvin Harrison Jr. is not that wide. The more you watch him, the more just you see how explosive he is. And I really liked the way he competed. It looked like, just at his LSU pro day, he looked like he was playing with an edge and kind of like he was out there to prove something. And I like that. I like that in those kind of guys. Cornerbacks and receivers, you need to have that kind of dog mentality. And I thought that was interesting. But yeah, if I had to stick and pick, Steve, I would do the same. I would go 3. I'm not sure, where do you want to go from here?
Well, at 34, again, I was talking with, the guys on Pittsburgh radio yesterday, and they asked, what do you think about wide receiver tackle at 34?
Yep.
And I said, I think it's all going to be dependent upon how the
Who's
board
available.
plays out, because if there's a guy at tackle who's dropped for some reason out of first round consideration that they thought wouldn't be there, then I think they absolutely do that. And the same will be for wide receiver. If one of these, top wide receivers somehow starts to fall down the board and he's there at 34, I think they absolutely jump on that as well.
Yeah, so. I think one of the underrated parts, I should have mentioned this a second ago, but when we were talking about number 3, I do think it's going to be a little weird with the team picking early, and then it's like, okay, well then you're just letting the draft go by. I think one maybe a little underrated part of this for Patriots fans this year will be excitement or suspense of seeing if they trade back into the first round. Like if there's a player in the 20s that they just really don't want to lose and they move up, like that would be very exciting. If they were like, what, we're not staying at 34, we're moving up to 28 and we're going to get, AD Mitchell, the receiver from Texas, or whoever, I don't know, whoever it is. I just think that would be add a whole other layer of excitement and really have a lot of buzz. And I think if they come away, assuming they come away with a quarterback at 3, I think most fans will be happy. Probably some, depending on who they take. And I think that's absolutely fair. But it will be interesting, though, to see how the back half plays out and see how people jockey for position based on. But I think you answered the question right. It is all based on how the board falls for tackle and receiver. For me.
And Mike Diabate from Locked On Patriots and I spoke yesterday on his show as well.
You've been a very busy guy. You're in high demand.
Yeah, I've been in demand this week. Who knows why? But but yeah, I was speaking to him about the same thing, and he's like in firm agreement there, because I think everything, is fluid at that point. Actually, for the rest of the draft, I mean, you can't really pencil in a position at any point after number 3. Unless you're taking in, okay, how's the rest of the board falling at that point?
Right. And just given the run on tackles that's expected early, and then how thin it gets late, it'll be interesting to see if what that breaking point's going to be. Like once, and we'll know what the league thinks about some of these guys in hindsight, after the draft's over. But it'll be interesting to see, like, they clearly thought that, so-and-so was the last tackle that was, worth taking in the top 2 rounds, and the next one didn't go until the 3rd or whatever it is. And I think you could take a swing at the apple. I've really liked the mocks lately that have them taking a quarterback and then receiver the next 2. I just think that would be so fun. But let's do this. And this is another one I'm throwing at you, okay? Because this is okay. You can't take a quarterback, receiver, or tackle at 34. What position do you want? And if you have a guy in mind, that's okay.
if I can't take a quarterback, receiver, or tackle at number 34, I think I look for the best cornerback on the
board.
board.
I don't know. That's a good one. I was going to go with Jatavion Sanders, the Texas tight end, if he's there. I think he would be fun. I think he'd be fun in this offense.
Yeah, because he's not a traditional, inline blocker type. He's more of the move tight end who can.
A lot of people compare him to David Njoku too, who was played in Alex Van Pelt's system, and I know it's not A plus B equals C necessarily, but I do think there are some parallels to their game, and his highlights are fun. Besides Brock Bowers, I think he's far and away the clear cut second tight end of the class, and that's a good answer though with cornerback. I just wonder, at 34, what guys will be available still if they're still there. Obviously, this is a total hypothetical question. So
yeah.
But,
I think that's a good question because, where do you go? Is it, a tight end? I was flip flopping between tight end and cornerback.
I thought in no particular order, the first three positions were cornerback, edge, and tight end. I was like, okay, well, maybe if there's a good pass rusher there or something, but I just think can't really go wrong with beefing up your defensive line or anything like that. I do think that would be valuable to go ahead and just keep adding pass rushers and making that defense strong. But I'm just thinking about how to weaponize, quote unquote, the offense, and so I'm just thinking, hey, Henry,
he'd be fun.
Henry and Hooper are solid, but you could. You need a plan for the future as well. So,
yeah, I think he'd be fun to watch. And again, he's not going to wow you with his blocking skills, but traditional tight ends. There's less of them. I'm not going to say they're moving away from because they're not in the NFL, but we're seeing more and more guys who are basically playing the tight end position that are big wide receivers.
Yeah, it's basically, and like, I'm not saying he was the first one, but he, in the mold of like a Jimmy Graham, from, back then where you start to see like the whole basketball on grass thing. And these guys are now more like, wide receivers or like power forwards or something like that, or it's just kind of, kind of interesting to see, how those parallels, happen. But what would be more surprising to you, Steve, if the Patriots trade back from 3 or they don't trade at all the entire draft?
I think if they don't trade at all,
it'd
be more surprising.
Me too.
I think there's a chance that they won't trade, that they will trade out of 3, excuse me. But I also think that they're going to be active. And if they see guys that they like, they're going to, move around the board to get them. So it's going to be interesting.
I have, I think it's interesting to me. For one, Adam Schefter has been, he was on and told Commanders fans they can order their Jaden Daniels jerseys now. So he's gonna have some egg on his face if that doesn't pan out. But he's very tied to the Patriots. He has some really tight connections there, and he really does not close the door on the trade thing. And I can't tell if that's just the Patriots just dangling the carrot to see if someone gets like really stupid and throws some crazy amount of capital at them, or if he's just not as tight with the new regime and they're just more tight-lipped. I don't know. I can't decipher that information.
Yeah, and for him to go out on a limb with Washington the way he did, that tells me he has some pretty good info there.
Yeah. Yeah. I would think that's coming.
He's usually spot on about that stuff. So when I saw that, of course, I'm a Drake May guy, so I was excited to see that because if he's that sure, that Jaden Daniels is going to Washington, that That's interesting. And as I said to you many times offline, I would love to be a fly on the wall if for some reason Washington takes somebody else at number 2 and Daniels and May are both there at 3, and who the Patriots take or not take either.
Yeah, I'm curious. I would be curious to see all their rankings. To be honest, with quarterback specifically, just because I'm curious on what type of guy they want, what type of offense are they. We assume we assume AVP will be running a similar offense he ran in Cleveland, but I mean, like, what Stefanski elements is he going to have in there? What will he take from the current Patriots offense, if much of anything? Like I don't know. So I'm just curious to see what kind of guy they. It'd be nice if we could see the rankings, or like you said, you go down to the 2 of those guys, May or Daniels. I just find it fascinating that I would find it fascinating just to see what guy they think would be a better fit for this current team.
Right. Yesterday as well, I spoke with Chris Price, but just on Twitter, not on the podcast.
Okay, I was going to say, geez, your phone must be on fire right now. No wonder it's going off. It's crying for help.
I did speak with Chris online, and we were talking about the May Daniels, dynamic there, and what he said. As much as we believe that Drake May.
Steve, did I lose
would be fun to see how he crafts the offense around a guy like Jaden Daniel. And I was like, absolutely. I think both guys fit, But I just thought that was an interesting comment, because he's kind of in the mode where he'd rather see them take Daniels.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. I mean, we've talked about it before. There's a lot to like about Daniels too. I do think it's interesting, and I'll use Russ's own comment of Jonathan Kraft will be selecting a quarterback at 3. Well, I think that when people hear the age and they hear, Jaden Daniels is 24, and some people are like, well, he's an older prospect, and people are like, well, why does that matter? He's still only 24. I do think that owners look at age. Age will factor into value at the ownership level specifically, probably more than coaches even. I think that's what hurts Penix too, is like he's 24 and he's had multiple injuries. So it's like damaged goods a little bit. I hate to say it like that, but I think that's the way some of these guys think about these players. And I like Penix. I think if the Patriots didn't take a quarterback at 3 and they were able to get him, I'd be interested, because from a pure thrower of the football, I mean, he's awesome. He has a great arm, and he seems like a really great guy, and he was loved by his teammates. All the quarterbacks in this class, like there's not really a D-bag among them. Like it seems like they're all pretty, they're all seem like pretty good guys, really liked by their teammates, so I think that's kind of cool too.
Yeah. And, and the one thing, when you're talking about age is May is only 21. So
right.
If you're going strictly by an age metric, where will Drake May be in 3 years?
Exactly.
Some of these guys are 24.
I mean, Jaden Daniels has started like 55 or 56 games in college.
Yeah.
So, if Drake May, even if he does sit for a year and he learns the system, and he's still going to be, probably 22 or 23, depending on when his birthday is, and then and then he'll be able to get experience, actually on the field and doing that too. And, or if he starts playing right away and what will he be when he's there? I would encourage people who are listening to the show who don't like Drake May to go just watch some of his throws and look at like how he manipulates in the pocket, and like their guys and legs and arms all around or all around him, especially around his base, and how he can still just put such great velocity on the ball. I mean, just this arm talent is just incredibly special. And he uses the middle of the field. To the reason I think you can make the case for Jaden Daniels for fitting into AVP, because he likes to run the ball, and so you could do a lot of you could do a lot of RPO stuff, and run actions and things like that. I think with Jaden, then that'd be interesting. I think with Drake May, for one, Drake May is really, really mobile as well. Not like Jaden Daniels, of course, but he also utilizes the middle of the field really well. And the Patriots have some great players, like Hunter Henry and Kendrick Bourne and Pop Douglas, who can utilize the middle of the field. And I think that would be interesting too. So I'm really excited to hear whenever we get to hear Alex Van Pelt speak or Gerard Mayo speak. I'm really interested to see, how they talk about, the guy they draft. And I'm sure they would have taken him number 1 overall, of course. But I'm curious to see how they talk about him and how they see him fitting in the offense. I think that will be fun.
I think Thursday night's press conference after round 1 is going to be must-see TV.
Agreed. I agree. Any other draft stuff before we touch on the article?
Well, we would just remiss one of our listeners, Haley Reed, said, "Hey there." So, Haley, thanks for checking in, and we appreciate you
checking in, Haley. Sorry, I missed the comment. There we go. I appreciate it. All right, let's rip this Band-Aid off. Okay. ESPN came out with the article talking. I'm sure you've heard it this morning. Basically discussing, saying that Robert Kraft spoke to Arthur Blank, the owner of the Falcons, and basically warned him about trusting Bill. And among other things, apparently the Falcons didn't even have Bill in their top 3 candidates. They ranked it Raheem Morris. I'm forgetting the middle one, and then Bobby Slowick, the offensive coordinator for the Houston Texans. I don't know what to believe anymore, Steve. I do believe this. I just feel like the Crafts are somehow losing a PR war without Bill Belichick saying anything. I just don't. I just continue to just not like some of these things that I've heard, and I'm not sure what to believe, if it's even true, which is a whole other conversation almost. But I just take all this with a grain of salt, and I feel like the truth is probably somewhere in the middle.
Right. I'm not sure I believe it. As you know, anything that comes out of ESPN about the Patriots, I'm always kind of skeptical about.
Right.
But I will say this. I've talked to some people this morning. We were bouncing stuff back and forth off of Twitter. And, some people are of the opinion, hey, you're going to trust ESPN now? And I would just say this. After seeing Kraft's comments about Belichick during the docuseries, The Dynasty, it gives me pause where normally where I would say that's a crock. I'm going, and we all know.
But hearing what Kraft had to say, it makes you say, well, I guess there's a chance, because he was pretty ruthless on that show. So
yeah, about Belichick, and I understand that the Krafts had nothing to do with the production of it. I was just going strictly on Kraft's comments about, the head coach that brought them to 9 Super Bowls, and he was characterizing him as a schmuck, a pain in the tush. Take what you will about all of that stuff. And, I go to the simple fact that Kraft took a beating in public opinion when they let Brady go. Yep. Brady goes down to Tampa and wins the Super Bowl. And do you really think he wants a repeat of that, where he lets Belichick go and, say he went to a team like Atlanta that now looks like a pretty good football team? I'm not going to say they're a Super Bowl favorite, but they're a pretty good football team right now.
No, but they're a playoff contender, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they are. So now Belichick goes down there. And what happens if he breaks Don Shula's record and somehow wins the Super Bowl with the Falcons? Can you imagine the outcry on Kraft? And who's he going to blame?
Let Bill and Tom go, and they both win Super Bowl somewhere else.
Right. And who's he going to blame then?
Right. So everybody at the time of the Brady thing, most people blamed Bill, and I think as time has showing us that maybe the Crafts had more to do with that. And I know that some people won't believe that, but I don't know. I think all parties were guilty, but personally, and but to pick on that too, like, do I think that Kraft could have called Arthur Blank and told him some of that stuff? Yes. Do I think that I agree with your theory? I do think that's true. I do not believe that Bill was not under serious consideration and that he wasn't the top candidate for the job. I think that the three that were listed were the next three. And, people forget this article. Go back to after Raheem Morris got the job. There were articles about it wasn't necessarily Arthur Blank, but other high-ranking people in the front office for the Falcons didn't want Bill because they didn't want to lose jobs or lose power, because they knew what it meant if Bill came in the building. All of a sudden, Bill is the head of the operation, and he brings his guys in. And some guys would stay, and those who stay would lose a lot of control, and some weren't even going to stay at all. So I personally think the front office of the Falcons convinced Arthur, probably in I guess combined with Kraft's phone call about warning him, he probably just opted for, Raheem Morris as the second best option and whatever. And now they're just playing like, oh no, Raheem's been the guy the whole time. No, we had other guys. We had two other guys. Bill.
Yeah, but they brought Belichick back for a second interview. That's what kind of makes me. I'm like, well, if Morris was the guy the whole time, then why did Belichick get brought back?
Mm-hmm.
And that part is, you can't argue that because they did. We all know that they did do that.
Yeah.
But anyway, like I said, I'm not saying I totally believe it. I'm just saying there's enough there to where it's believable.
Yeah, in the past there haven't been, but just given Kraft's, comments, the last year, or so, 2 years even. I just think it opened the door for this to become more believable, and I think they're taking a lot of heat, which is why Stacey James, the PR director for the Patriots, I think released, didn't he release a statement? So, he pretty much shut this down, and and I don't blame him for coming out of this, because I think people are, again, I think all Kraft has done is basically try to call Bill out and kick dirt on him of certain things, and all people are doing are like, you guys are looking terrible in all of this. But I just don't really see. Look, I think could Kraft have come out and said, look, after a certain time, we just felt like we needed to make a break, and Bill was unwilling to try some new things, and we just felt like we needed to change. I think if he had come out and said, obviously he would add like his respectfulness of Bill and whatever. I think if he had done something like that, I don't think we'd be having this conversation. But then you have, the comment at the owners meeting, and then you have the dynasty thing, and then you have like this crappy article come out on ESPN, and it's all like, I don't know, it's just a mess. It just looks like a messy divorce. It looks like, parents fighting for, what's the word I'm looking for? Custody of their kids, excuse me.
Yep.
So I haven't had my coffee yet this morning, so I don't know. It's the whole thing is a mess in my opinion, and it's just disappointing. That's just my opinion. Any final thoughts, Steve?
No, I'm good today. I know you're pressed for time, so I won't eat up your time.
No, I'm okay. I'm not. I gotta leave here shortly, but for work. But yeah, no. I guess my final thought, Steve, is I cannot believe we are almost a week away to the draft. It feels like this is like this feels like the hardest week. Like next week, it'll probably move slow, but we'll be excited, or those who like the draft will be excited because there'll be a lot of build up. But this week just feels like you're almost there, but you're still out of reach. So I'll be looking forward to next week when we can really break stuff down. Steve and I are going to try to get a guest on, and I don't know if we do it live or we would just record it as a standalone interview, but either way, we're going to try to get somebody on to have a draft conversation with, maybe at the end of the week or over the weekend. And as I mentioned earlier in the show, we are going to do our annual first round mock draft on Monday. So no show next Wednesday. We're going to do our mock draft Monday episode, same time, noon Eastern. and we're going to go through that first round annual mock, all 32 teams. So that'll be exciting. And then the morning after each day of the draft, Steve and I will be recording a short kind of take on what the Patriots did the night before, and then we'll do a recap show the following week. So just wanted to, I know it's a lot, but we're trying to, we're excited to talk about all these guys, and we'll have to. I'm sure as long as I don't have a Cole Strange moment, Steve, I'll be fine.
The Patriots are always good for one of those moments.
Oh yeah. Well, we'll see what this regime holds. I don't know. I mean, maybe.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, because Bill always threw some obscure guy in there. I remember that one year they didn't even have any tape on the guy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They stumped the truck a couple of times. Yeah, they definitely did. That's what the ESPN broadcast says. Which, by the way, I still don't understand why Todd McShay is not a part of the draft booth anymore. I personally am not a big Booger McFarland fan as a draft analyst, at least. I would rather have Field Yates at least in his place, but I don't really get that whole some of their. I don't know. ESPN has a lot of politics, it seems like, inside of their building. So I don't really get that whole thing from a broadcast.
Yeah, and the NFL Network putting their morning show on hiatus until later on in the year, just before the draft. I mean, what's going on with that?
I don't know why. I mean, I'm sure there's people who could tell me who know, but it seems like it would make a lot more sense to wait until like the end of April and then do it for the next like 2 months or something like that, or 3 months. Because they're kind of like restructuring that whole thing with Good Morning Football. So yeah, but anyway, we'll touch base. We'll touch base with everybody next week. Looking forward to doing mock draft Monday. Again, we're going to try to get an interview over the weekend if we can. But before we go, please subscribe to us on YouTube and Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. Like, share, leave us a review. It keeps us high in the podcast rankings so other Patriots fans can find us. I want to thank everyone who tuned in live, everyone who downloaded the show late. For Steve Balistrieri, I'm Derek Havens. Thank you again for listening to Patriots 4th and 2, and we will see you guys next week.